Study this.
I'm Adam Green. I'm the writer and director.
I'm Emma Bell and I play Parker.
I'm Kevin Zegers. I play Dan. I feel this is like an audition.
Yeah.
I'm 5'9" and from Canada.
I can do it better if you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want anything? Tell me, just ask.
Yeah.
If you want. Do I need to be off
Do you
book?
have any questions? Should
Why
I?
don't we try one, and then if you have anything,
Oh,
should I?
Shawn.
Sorry. And this is Shawn Ashmore. And I play Lynch. Do me out.
All right. Well, first off, can y'all tell me, or exactly how did the story come to creation?
I grew up skiing in the Boston area where the ski mountains aren't as nice as what you get here in Park City. In fact, they're downright scary because most of the time you're not even skiing on snow, you're skiing on ice. And a lot of the mountains that I grew up skiing on were only open Friday through. Do you want me to look in there or there? Okay, this is weird. No, I gotta look at you. They were open Friday through Sunday, so they didn't really have business during the week. And everybody who's ever skied before knows that feeling when the chair stops for no reason. And normally it's because somebody fell getting off on the top or the bottom, but they don't come on the loudspeaker and tell you that. They don't say, "Sorry, people, it's going to be going in a few seconds." And there's this collective fear that rushes through everybody of how would I get down from this spot on it? And some of the times you could probably jump, or maybe you're near a pole or something, but there's other times there's no way down. So I was watching the morning news in LA, and the weather is always the same there, so you never actually look at the weather, you look at the shot they have behind it, and they said, this is a shot from Big Bear Mountain. It was like 6 in the morning, and the chairs weren't moving. And I started thinking to myself, how do those chairs even stay up there? I can't believe I used to ski. Where I used to ski on Sunday, boom, 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 stop. And then I went running into work. I'm like, guys, I have this great idea. It's 3 people on a chair. It's going to be the easiest thing ever. It's 3 people on a chair. And then after I wrote it, we realized this is the most impossible thing anybody could ever possibly do. And where are we going to find actors willing to do it? Thankfully, all 3 of them had just come out of rehab. They were looking to start up their
Need the money
careers
big
again.
time.
Yes. And that's how it worked out.
Awesome. Well, how did you guys get attached whenever you, I guess, heard the story or saw the script?
Okay, yeah, I read the script and I went in for an audition. So I really liked the script when I read it. I couldn't really put it down. It was really suspenseful and kept my attention. And then for me, it was just sort of like a normal audition. I didn't really think I was gonna get it or anything. And
It wasn't normal though.
it wasn't a normal audition. It was it was an intense scene.
But she was the first person to walk in and read for the film, and that's usually the worst audition to have, because no matter what, you're never going to get it. And she came in, she left, and I looked at the casting director and I said, I'm good. And they said, you can't hire the first girl, come on. And we went through all this stuff, and of course the producers had their moment of like, we just try to get a name, we got to get to this, we got to get to that. And it always came back to Emma, and at the end of the day, 5 weeks later, all these other auditions.
Oh,
So, no, but that's like a first, I think. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Not the first person in the door. Sometimes, no, I haven't.
well, there you go.
And Kevin and I have been friends for a long time. Kevin, you were already doing the film, and Kevin had called me up. I actually got the script independently from Kevin through my agents, and I read it, I guess a week before, and Kevin called me up and said, I'm buddies with Adam Green, we're going to be making the movie, and I said, well, I've read the script. And so I came in and tested with Kevin, and I think just having a past relationship and being friends with him for years and years, I think sort of helped the chemistry between Dan and Lynch in the film, and so I think that definitely didn't hurt. Also, kind of going off that, the most of the film is really only the 3 of you, and it how close did you guys bond? How important was the overall chemistry between all 3 in order to get the whole film to come together in the end? I think it was paramount that we got along and that we sort of were on the same page, because at the end of the day, not only performance-wise were we depending on each other, it was really strange. We were isolated as well from the crew, so really the only people we could talk to were each other, and then Adam, who had I had a walkie in my pocket so he could direct us, and we just literally looked down and we could see like Adam looking up at us and directing us. So we were pretty isolated, which sort of I think helped focus the performances and what we were doing. But it was really important that we got along, and I think that we were on the same page, and we were. I mean, we did a lot of discussions with Adam and sort of rehearsals and just talking to each other before we got up there. And
what I loved about the 3 of them is that they embraced the fact that they were kind of on an island. And this is no slight to actors. I'm sitting with 3 of them, but typically on a set, it's far as I'm concerned, the actors have one of the easier jobs for the most part, and yet they're coddled to like they're children or something, where after every take, a million people come rushing over. Do you want something? Do you want something? You have a grip who's getting paid nothing and gets no credit, who's been there for 20 hours that day with a broken back and his knees and stuff, and nobody cares about him. And these guys recognize that, and they appreciate the crew, and they never complain about anything, and they embrace the fact of like what they were doing. They took care of each other. They even, I think Kevin at some point had said they weren't going to bring their cell phones with them up there. So even in between takes, when it was like 45 minutes before we'd be rolling again, they stayed in the moment. They never kind of went back to real life. And it's, I've worked with a lot of actors. You wouldn't normally get that. I mean, the commitment between the three of them and the respect for each other that they had is something that doesn't happen often.
The film, at least from my perspective, was a lot like a book. It was very dialogue-centered, ran very well in that aspect. But how much of it was improv when you actually got up there and you started just acting on a whim, or was it all on
It was
script?
pretty much all scripted.
Pretty much all scripted,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, every once in a while there was, especially
In the beginning, you
the
guys.
beginning we did a little back and forth, but it was mostly scripted. I mean, you know, you toss a thing in here or there, just as any actor taking the line. You know what I mean? Like you might rearrange it a little bit, but pretty much everything was scripted. And of course, like when you're yelling and screaming for help, it's written like, you know, they scream for help, and then we're all like, "Fuck, help us!" You know what I mean? Like, so there was a little bit of that, but no, Adam's script was tight and precise from the get-go, which is obviously what I think drew us all in. But there wasn't a lot of improv. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't really remember a lot of that. So.
And there's also not a whole lot of gore. I mean, I think there's like 2 scenes, or maybe 3, that are pretty violent, but for the most part, it's very psychological in terms of that. How hard was that to keep going throughout the whole shoot and to stay in that moment whenever you don't really have blood and all that spattered to remind you of what all you're going through as a character?
The most challenging thing I think was Kevin's death, because Kevin, his whole performance was off screen, which we recorded just the audio of what he was going through, and then obviously he wasn't really getting ripped apart by wolves, so these guys are reacting to something that they're not really even seeing, so everything was in sort of both of their minds, but that in the script it says the camera does not cut away, it stays on their faces as they hear the sounds of this, and he's screaming, and that was really the big that was sort of like the pivotal moment in the whole shoot, I think, was that. And even Kevin on the ground just screaming and yelling, and we had myself and the stunt coordinator, we had like a rope around you, a harness, and we were pulling you back and forth as he was
So
screaming.
it sounded like he's being yanked and pulled and shit, you know.
Yeah.
And that, like, small stuff like that. I mean, you could have easily just sat down there and screamed, and it would have been enough to sort of maybe get us there. But the idea of, you know, trying to capture that idea in that moment, and then just even hearing your buddy being like jerked and moved and putting it in context of what's happening in the film, but like it ratchets us up to that next level.
Yeah.
So, you know, those are all like tricks and stuff you can do, and sometimes someone wouldn't be willing to have a rope tied to them and be dragged around, you know what I mean? But it does, little tiny subtle things like that can really pull out a beat, even if it's just a moment, even if it's just like
There wasn't going to be a lot of help, I don't think, for anyone on this movie.
No.
In terms of, so I feel like for all of us, I think, you know, if there's going to be no such thing as like, oh, I didn't feel like this scene was great for me, because it's sort of like sometimes you do a movie and you, in general, I think it's a pretty even when you're working on something, everyone's like, it was very collaborative. That's horseshit. You know, everyone's trying to win every scene. It's like actors especially are very selfish, and really good actors are very selfish. And I think for this, if I wasn't good in a scene or if Shawn wasn't good, the scene just wasn't going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all understood that very early on, that I think if the dialogue wasn't working, it wasn't like we were all going to sit there and go like, well, you know, I feel good about it. It's like, well, no, it's not working, so let's fix it sort of together in whatever fashion we feel like best service is, just getting the scene done properly. And then you sort of put your own ego aside and
get dragged through this night.
yeah, but it's just sort of like, I don't know, if them reacting to me dying is as important as me dying, so you know, it's
I think how we shot it too helped, for me at least, because it was we were so isolated, and Shawn touched on it. It was, for me, it was really easy to suspend my belief and put myself in a situation where, even though it wasn't happening in front of me, we couldn't see the crew, we couldn't see the lights, we couldn't see the camera practically. So it was pretty easy, because we were not easy, but it was like, it put us in a mood, I think, the cold and the weather and all of that
yeah,
stuff.
there was no, this was probably the first thing I've ever done. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to do next. You know,
Yeah,
usually
it
that
was
set
very-
you see, you know, someone's playing Tetris on their phone, and it's like, And after, in between scenes, you're dealing with life. You're dealing with, we were in Utah, and none of us live in Utah, so it's like, you talk to your girlfriend, or you talk to your parents, or whatever it is, but like, you're in touch, and I feel like for the majority of the day, for us, I wasn't in contact with anybody, and
Just
so when you're sitting up there, staring out into darkness, and it's snowing in your face, I wasn't thinking about anything other than like, let's get this done as quickly
Surviving
as we can.
that.
And let's get this done as quickly as we can and do it as well as we can so we can get the fuck down.
How long was the shoot?
It was 24 days, 19 of which were overnight shoots. So the temperature towards the end of the night, the temperature would get down around 0 for the most part, and then there would be like 65-mile-an-hour winds with a wind chill of minus 20 or something. But we got hit with 2 storms. We got hit with a 38-inch blizzard and a 34-inch blizzard, and I was like, bring it on. Like, I wanted that for the story, and they never complained about any of it, which was great. And the coldest, actually, the coldest thing was actually not when we were shooting with them. It was when we were getting the wide exteriors of the mountain, because we had to go to another mountain right as the sun was coming up in order to get those shots. And right before the sun comes up, the temperature plummets another 10. So those are the most miserable, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
The film, I guess, is showing at the midnight, Park City at midnight selection, and that's really a benchmark, I guess, in order. And if the film comes out next week, how does that make you guys feel? You're coming here, and then it's about to come out, and everybody's going to slowly see it, building buzz. Is it exciting, or?
It's an honor. It's just you look at the other films that have played in the midnight slot we opened at the Egyptian Theater on Sunday night, and like that's when Blair Witch played, and that's when Saw played, and to be included in that list, and even the other movies that we're playing alongside this year, they're so great. So to be included as one of them it's an honor, and it's exciting because we don't have a distributor that's going to go and spend $20 million on a campaign with national TV commercials during the Super Bowl and billboards everywhere and buses. It's just the fact. So the fact that we get to do Sundance right before and have this chance for so many people from all over the world to come and see it and start talking about it, this isn't a movie where we need to trick people to go see it. The movie speaks for itself, and it's the best marketing tool that we could have. And I feel like because of that, we actually do have a fighting chance on February 5th that people will go out of their way to go see this and support it. And I do this all the time, but I challenge the genre fans, because all they do is, they're remaking Nightmare on Elm Street, oh my god, they're remaking Halloween, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, what'd you go see? The remake of Halloween. Was it good? No, it sucked. So fuck you, fans. Actually, put your money where your mouth is and go support something original, and you'll start getting more original stuff, because Hollywood would make animated Holocaust comedies if people wanted to pay for it. They don't care, and they admit it in the meetings when they call me in and they're like, "Oh, we're thinking about doing a remake of The Killer Chair or whatever." Okay, great, but we don't want the Killer Chair in it. So good luck. And they don't even give you a chance, but they just want the title, because that's what the fans will pay for. So if you're sick of what's going on, you're sick of the torture films, you're sick of the remakes, stop going and fine. Don't even go see this. Go see something else, but see something original again, and let's correct what happened in this past decade, because this past decade is the lowest point that the genre has ever had. It's Generation Xerox at this point.